They judged a black man at first sight, but the ending left the world thinking. The rain had been falling over Belmont since dawn, turning the streets into long mirrors of gray sky and flashing headlights. By 7 in the evening, the storm had grown violent. Wind pressed against the glass towers downtown. Traffic lights swung above flooded intersections, and most people hurried home with their heads lowered beneath umbrellas. Inside the Belmont Grand Hotel, however, everything remained warm, golden, and perfect. Crystal chandeliers glowed above the marble lobby. A pianist played softly beside a fountain decorated with white roses. Men in tailored suits checked their watches while women in evening dresses moved toward the ballroom, where the city's most important charity gala was about to begin. The event was called A Future for Every Child. Business leaders, politicians, celebrities, and wealthy donors had gathered to raise money for underprivileged students. Television crews waited outside the ballroom. Photographers stood beside a wall covered with sponsor logos. On the stage, a giant screen displayed images of smiling children holding books. At the main entrance, a black man stepped out of the rain. He was tall, perhaps in his early 50s, with tired eyes and a short gray beard. His dark coat was soaked. Mud stained the bottom of his trousers, and one side of his shirt had been torn near the shoulder. He carried no umbrella, no briefcase, and no invitation envelope. The moment he crossed the polished floor, several people turned to look at him. A woman holding a glass of champagne moved her handbag closer to her body. A hotel guest whispered something to her husband. The doorman frowned and glanced toward security. The man noticed every reaction, but he said nothing. He walked toward the front desk with a slight limp, leaving small drops of rainwater behind him. A young receptionist named Emily looked up from her computer. Her smile appeared automatically, but it faded when she saw his clothes. "Can I help you?" she asked. "Yes," the man replied. His voice was calm but urgent. "I need to get into the ballroom." Emily glanced at the line of elegant guests. "Do you have an invitation?" "No." "A ticket?" "No." "Are you part of the hotel staff?" "No." Emily's expression hardened. "I'm sorry, sir. The ballroom is closed for a private event." "I understand," he said, "but I need to speak to someone inside. It's important." "Who do you need to speak to?" The man paused. "The person organizing the gala." "That would be Mr. Preston." "Then I need to see Mr. Preston." Emily looked him up and down again. "And your name?" "Daniel Carter." She typed the name into the computer, although she already seemed certain she would find nothing. "I don't see you on the guest list." "I told you. I don't have an invitation." "Then I cannot let you enter." Daniel placed both hands on the counter. Water ran from his sleeves. "Please call him. Tell him Daniel Carter is here." A security guard named Frank had already begun walking toward them. Frank was broad-shouldered and serious, with a silver badge pinned to his jacket. "Is there a problem?" he asked. Emily lowered her voice. "This gentleman is trying to enter the gala without an invitation." "I'm not trying to cause trouble," Daniel said. "I only need 5 minutes." Frank stood between Daniel and the ballroom entrance. "You heard her. It's a private event. There has been an accident." The receptionist looked up. "What kind of accident?" she asked. "On Millstone Bridge. A van slid off the road near the eastern entrance. There were children inside." For the first time, Emily's face showed concern. "Did you call emergency services?" "The storm damaged the phone lines near the bridge. My phone was destroyed in the water. I stopped 2 cars, but neither driver would open their windows. This was the first place I could reach." Frank pointed toward a hotel phone on a side table. "You can call emergency services from there." "I already did," Daniel replied. "They're sending help. But one of the children told me the people responsible for tonight's event would be here." "The van belongs to the Bright Horizon Youth Center." Emily stared at him. Bright Horizon was one of the charities being honored that evening. Daniel continued. "Some of the children are injured. One boy is trapped. The water is rising beneath the bridge." Frank's expression changed, but only slightly. "Where are the adults?" "The driver is unconscious. Another staff member has a broken leg." "And you just left them there?" "I pulled 6 children out before I came. 2 are still with the van. A truck driver stopped and stayed with them. We need more help immediately." Emily reached for the phone. Frank raised his hand. "Wait." He turned to Daniel. "You expect us to believe you pulled 6 children from a crashed van, walked all the way here in this storm, and came directly to a charity gala?" "I don't care what you believe," Daniel said. "Call Mr. Preston." Tell him to send every person with medical training to Millstone Bridge. The confidence in Daniel's voice disturbed Frank more than anger would have. Guests had begun watching from a distance. A photographer lifted his camera. Frank leaned closer. You need to calm down. I am calm, Daniel said. But a child may drown while we stand here discussing my clothes. At that moment, Richard Preston came out of the ballroom. Richard was the chairman of the Gala Committee and the chief executive of Preston Development, one of Belmont's largest real estate companies. He wore a black tuxedo and a gold watch that cost more than most people earned in a year. What's happening? He asked. Emily stepped forward. This man says a Bright Horizon van crashed near Millstone Bridge. Richard studied Daniel's appearance. Who are you? My name is Daniel Carter. Do you work for Bright Horizon? No. Are you related to one of the children? No. Then why were you at the bridge? My car broke down nearby. Richard exchanged a quick look with Frank. Daniel saw it. It was the silent look people gave when they had already written a story about him. A black man in wet, damaged clothing. No invitation. No identification visible. Asking to enter a room full of wealthy people. To them, the most believable explanation was not that he had saved children. It was that he wanted something. Richard folded his arms. Mr. Carter, this is a major public event. We cannot create panic based on an unconfirmed story. Then confirm it. We will. Now. Richard's jaw tightened. You do not give orders here. Daniel stepped closer. No. The rising water does. The lobby became silent. A television reporter named Vanessa Lee had been waiting near the ballroom. Hearing the argument, she approached with her cameraman. Did you say there was an accident involving children? She asked. Richard quickly raised a hand toward the camera. Please do not film this. We have no verified information. Vanessa looked at Daniel. Sir, what did you see? Daniel described the crash in detail. The van had lost control after avoiding a fallen tree. It had broken through the bridge barrier and rolled onto its side beside the river. Water had entered through the rear doors. Daniel had used a tire iron to break a window and crawl inside. One boy is trapped by the seats, he explained. His name is Marcus. He is 11 years old. He has asthma, and his breathing is getting worse. Vanessa turned toward Richard. Why hasn't the gala been informed? Because we still don't know whether this man is telling the truth. Daniel looked directly at him. What would make you believe me? Richard hesitated. A police report. A call from the charity. Evidence. Daniel slowly reached inside his coat. Frank immediately grabbed his arm. Several guests gasped. Daniel froze. I'm reaching for a child's bracelet, he said quietly. Frank did not release him. Take your hand out slowly. Daniel did as he was told. Between his fingers was a small blue bracelet covered in plastic stars. One star had the name Maya written across it in silver ink. She gave me this because she thought she was going to die, Daniel said. She asked me to give it to her mother. Vanessa's cameraman lowered the camera for a moment. Richard looked uncomfortable, but he still did not move. Then a woman in a green evening gown rushed from the ballroom. Her name was Claire Williams, the director of Bright Horizon Youth Center. What did you say? She demanded. Did you say Maya? Daniel turned toward her. Do you know her? She's one of our students. Claire pulled out her phone and tried to call someone. Her hands began shaking. Our van should have arrived 40 minutes ago. She whispered. I thought they were delayed by the weather. Daniel gave her the bracelet. Claire stared at it and covered her mouth. This is Maya's, she said. The entire lobby changed. Richard's face lost its color. Vanessa looked toward the camera. We need to go live. Wait, Richard said. But it was too late. Claire began shouting instructions. She asked if any doctors or nurses were present. Several guests came forward. The hotel manager called emergency services again. Staff members collected blankets, flashlights, and first aid supplies. Within minutes, the luxurious lobby became a rescue station. Yet Frank still held Daniel's arm. You can let him go, Claire said sharply. Frank released him. Daniel rubbed his wrist, but did not complain. I'll show you the quickest route, he said. An ambulance had not yet arrived because flooding had blocked the main road. Several guests volunteered their four-wheel drive vehicles. Daniel climbed into the front seat of a large hotel transport truck. Vanessa and her cameraman followed. Richard remained beneath the chandelier, watching people rush into the rain. For a moment, he seemed uncertain whether to stay inside, where the cameras and donors had gathered, or go to the bridge, where his expensive shoes would sink into mud. Then Vanessa turned her camera toward him. Richard grabbed a raincoat. The rescue convoy moved slowly through the storm. Daniel guided them away from the flooded avenue and through a narrow industrial road behind an abandoned factory. Inside the truck, Claire sat beside him. "How bad is it?" she asked. Daniel did not soften the truth. "The boy named Marcus is in danger. The truck driver who stayed behind is doing everything he can, but the van shifted before I left." "Why did you come to the hotel?" One of the girls mentioned the gala. She said important people would be here. Claire looked down at Maya's bracelet. "You walked almost 2 miles. I ran when I could." She noticed the blood on his shirt. "You're injured." "It's not important. You may have broken a rib." "The children are important." Vanessa, sitting behind them, leaned forward. "Mr. Carter, what do you do for a living?" Daniel looked through the windshield. "Tonight, I'm just someone who stopped." The convoy reached Millstone Bridge 20 minutes later. The scene was worse than Daniel had described. The white van lay on its side beneath the broken railing. Muddy river water rushed around its wheels. A truck driver stood waist-deep in the current, holding a flashlight above his head. 2 children huddled under a plastic sheet near the road. 4 others sat inside the truck driver's cab, wrapped in blankets. As soon as Daniel stepped out, a little girl ran toward him. "Mr. Daniel." He knelt despite the pain in his side and caught her in his arms. "You came back," she cried. "I told you I would." The guests who had followed from the hotel stood motionless. They had expected confusion, perhaps an exaggeration or misunderstanding. Instead, they saw 6 terrified children calling Daniel's name. They saw blood on the broken van window where he had climbed inside. They saw his abandoned car parked near the bridge with its hood open. And they saw the trapped boy's hand pressed weakly against the glass. The rescue began immediately. A surgeon who had attended the gala entered the water with 2 firefighters who arrived from the northern road. Hotel workers formed a line to carry equipment down the slope. Claire comforted the children while Vanessa reported live from beneath an umbrella. Daniel returned to the van. A firefighter stopped him. "You're injured. Stay back. I know where the boy is trapped. You can tell us." The seats collapsed around his legs. "There is a narrow space beside the rear door. I'm the only one who has been inside." The firefighter looked at the rising water, then at Daniel. "Stay close to me." They climbed through the broken window. Inside, the van was dark and half filled with cold water. Marcus lay between 2 twisted rows of seats. His face was pale. Each breath came with a thin, painful sound. Daniel crawled toward him. "You kept your promise," Marcus whispered. "Yes." "Are the others safe?" "They're waiting for you." The firefighter used a hydraulic tool to separate the metal frames. Daniel supported the boy's head above the water. Outside, cameras recorded every moment. The rescue took 14 minutes. To Marcus, it felt like hours. The water reached Daniel's chest. His arms shook from cold and exhaustion. Twice, the van moved beneath them. The firefighter shouted for everyone to get out, but Daniel refused to release the boy. Finally, the crushed seat broke free. They pulled Marcus through the window as the van shifted toward the river. Seconds after they reached the slope, the vehicle rolled completely into the water and disappeared beneath the current. The crowd gasped. Paramedics placed Marcus on a stretcher and gave him oxygen. His eyes searched the faces around him until he found Daniel. He lifted one hand. Daniel took it. "You saved me," Marcus said. "No," Daniel answered. "A lot of people saved you." Marcus shook his head. "You came first." Vanessa's camera captured the words. By midnight, the footage had spread across the country. Millions of people saw the black man who had entered an elegant hotel in wet, torn clothing and had been treated like a threat. They saw security grab his arm when he reached for a child's bracelet. They heard powerful men question his story while children waited in rising water. Then they saw those same children run to him. They saw him enter the flooded van for the second time. They saw him emerge carrying Marcus. News stations called him the hero of Millstone Bridge. Social media praised his courage and condemned the hotel's response. Some viewers demanded that the receptionist and security guard be fired. Others attacked Richard Preston for caring more about his gala than the emergency. But while the world argued, Daniel disappeared. After doctors treated the cut on his shoulder and confirmed that 2 of his ribs were fractured, he refused interviews and left the hospital alone. Vanessa tried to contact him, but the address he had given was outdated. For 3 days, nobody knew where he was. Then Claire received a phone call from the Belmont Veterans Center. Daniel Carter lived in a small room there. He had once been a decorated rescue pilot in the United States Air Force. Years earlier, his helicopter had been shot down during a mission to evacuate wounded civilians. Daniel had helped save 12 people, but suffered serious injuries. After returning home, he struggled with pain, trauma, and the loss of his wife, who died from cancer shortly after his retirement. His life slowly collapsed. Medical bills consumed his savings. A business partner disappeared with the money Daniel had invested in a transportation company. He lost his house. For a time, he slept in his car. The car that broke down near Millstone Bridge was almost everything he had left. The story became even bigger. Reporters gathered outside the Veterans Center. Donations poured in. A national television program offered Daniel a large payment for an exclusive interview. Companies promised him vehicles, money, and sponsorships. He refused nearly all of them. Finally, 1 week after the accident, Daniel agreed to appear at a press conference. The event was held in the same ballroom he had been prevented from entering. This time, nobody asked for his invitation. A new suit had been prepared for him, but Daniel arrived wearing a simple dark jacket and clean blue shirt. Claire sat beside him. Marcus and Maya were in the front row with their families. Emily, Frank, and Richard were also present. The room was filled with journalists. Daniel approached the microphone. The applause lasted almost 2 minutes. When the room became quiet, he looked across the crowd. "I know many people expect me to speak about what happened at the hotel," he began. "Some want me to express anger. Some want to hear that I forgive everyone. Some want a simple story with good people on one side and bad people on the other." He paused. But life is rarely that simple. He looked toward Emily. The receptionist saw a wet man with no invitation. He looked at Frank. The security guard saw someone who might create danger. Then he looked at Richard. The chairman saw a disruption that might damage an important event. Daniel placed both hands on the podium. "They were wrong about me. But the question is not only why they were wrong. The question is why their first explanation felt so natural to them." No one moved. When I walked into that hotel, nobody knew I had been a rescue pilot. Nobody knew I was a veteran. Nobody knew I had saved people before. Nobody knew I was injured because I had just pulled children from a van. His voice grew stronger. "But here is what troubles me. Why should any of that have been necessary for me to deserve respect?" The room remained completely silent. What if I had never served in the military? What if I had never saved anyone? What if I had been unemployed, homeless, afraid, confused, or desperate? Would it have been acceptable to humiliate me then? Several people lowered their eyes. Daniel continued. "The world decided I was worthy after it learned my history. People called me a hero after they saw proof. But before the proof, I was still a human being. That should have been enough." Marcus's mother began to cry. Daniel looked directly into the cameras. "We often say we do not judge people by their skin, clothes, accent, job, neighborhood, or bank account. Yet every day, we make decisions in seconds. We decide who looks dangerous, who looks intelligent, who belongs, who deserves patience, who deserves a second chance." He paused again. Sometimes those decisions are not shouted. They are expressed through a handbag pulled closer, a door locked faster, a resume ignored, a seat left empty, or a story doubted. Richard Preston shifted uncomfortably. Daniel turned toward him. "Mr. Preston, you created a gala called A Future for Every Child. That is a beautiful promise. But promises are tested outside ballrooms. They are tested when helping someone is inconvenient, uncertain, and uncomfortable." Richard stood slowly. Every camera turned toward him. He walked toward the stage and stopped several feet from Daniel. "Mr. Carter," he said, "I owe you an apology." Daniel waited. "I doubted you," Richard continued. "I cared more about protecting the event than understanding what you were saying. My actions could have cost a child his life." His voice broke slightly. "I am deeply sorry." Daniel studied him. "An apology is a beginning," he said. Richard nodded. "What would make it more than that?" Daniel looked toward the bright horizon children. "Change what happens after tonight." Richard returned to his seat without defending himself. Daniel then announced that he would accept none of the personal donations being offered to him. Instead, he asked for the money to create the First Response Scholarship, a program that would train young people from neglected communities in emergency medicine, disaster response, and public service. "Heroism should not depend on luck," he said. "People should have the skills and opportunity to help when help is needed." The announcement received another standing ovation. Yet Daniel raised his hand. "Please do not applaud me for refusing money," he said. "I am not too proud to need help. I do need help. Many veterans do. Many families do. There is no shame in that." He smiled gently. "But I have learned that public attention is temporary. Today, the cameras are here because I saved children. Tomorrow, they will move to another story. I want whatever remains after the cameras leave to belong to the future." In the following months, the First Response Scholarship raised more than $30 million. Richard Preston donated the first $5 million and resigned as chairman of the gala committee. He later joined a city project that trained hotel and corporate staff to respond to emergencies without profiling people based on appearance. Emily kept her job, but she asked to attend community outreach programs. She visited the Veterans Center and apologized to Daniel privately. "I was afraid," she admitted. "Of me?" Daniel asked. Emily struggled to answer. "Of making the wrong decision." Daniel nodded. "And because you were afraid of making one wrong decision, you made another." She looked ashamed. "I don't know how to fix it." "You cannot fix the past," Daniel said. "But you can recognize the next moment before it becomes the past." Frank also apologized. At first, his words sounded formal, almost rehearsed. Then he removed his security badge and placed it on the table. "I treated you like a suspect," he said. "You treated me like a picture in your mind," Daniel replied. "You never met me." Frank looked at the badge. "I've done that before." "Then do something different next time." A year after the accident, the First Response Scholarship opened its first training center. The building stood 3 blocks from Millstone Bridge. Marcus, fully recovered, attended the opening ceremony. Maya wore a new bracelet, this time with Daniel's name written on one of the stars. Above the entrance was a sentence chosen by Daniel. "See the person before you see the story you invented about them." Students from across Belmont entered the program. Some came from wealthy families. Others came from shelters, foster homes, or neighborhoods ignored by city investment. They trained together. They learned to stop bleeding, perform CPR, rescue people from water, respond to fires, and remain calm during disasters. They also studied the invisible barriers that prevented people from receiving help. Daniel became the center's director. He was not always comfortable with the title. He still preferred standing beside the training pool, teaching students how to carry an injured person without worsening spinal damage. One afternoon, a young student named Anthony stayed behind after class. "Mr. Carter," he asked, "did you know those people at the hotel would judge you?" Daniel considered the question. "I knew it was possible." "Did it make you angry?" "Yes." "But you still went back to save Marcus." Daniel looked through the window toward the bridge. "My anger was real," he said. "But Marcus's danger was real too. I had to decide which one would control my actions." Anthony nodded. "Were you scared inside the van?" "Terrified." "You didn't look scared on television." Courage usually looks calm from a distance. Daniel placed a training helmet on the shelf. Up close, courage is shaking hands that keep working. Years passed, but the footage from the hotel never disappeared. It was shown in schools, police training programs, hospitals, and companies. People debated whether Richard, Emily, and Frank were cruel, careless, prejudiced, or simply human. Daniel rejected easy answers. He said labeling them as monsters allowed everyone else to feel innocent. "The dangerous thought," he explained, "is believing that only bad people judge unfairly. Ordinary people do it. Educated people do it. Kind people do it. I do it too. The work is not proving that we are perfect. The work is noticing our judgment before it becomes someone else's suffering." 10 years after the storm, Marcus graduated from medical school. At the ceremony, he searched the audience until he saw Daniel sitting beside his mother. Marcus had chosen emergency medicine. After receiving his diploma, he walked past university officials and embraced the man who had once held his head above freezing water. "You said a lot of people saved me," Marcus whispered. "They did. But you came first." Daniel smiled. "Then you go first for somebody else." 3 months later, Marcus began working at Belmont City Hospital. On his first night, an ambulance brought in an unconscious man who had been found behind a shopping center. His clothes were dirty. He carried no identification. The police suspected he was intoxicated. A nurse glanced at the man and said, "He's probably another homeless addict." Marcus remembered a rainy hotel lobby. He examined the man carefully. The patient was not drunk. He was suffering from a rare diabetic emergency. Without immediate treatment, he would have died. Hours later, the man opened his eyes. He was a school janitor who had worked 2 jobs for 27 years. He had missed several medical appointments because he could not afford to lose wages. The next morning, Marcus stood beside the hospital window and called Daniel. "I went first," he said. Daniel understood. The world had once believed the story was about a heroic black man proving wealthy people wrong. But that was never the whole story. The rescue at Millstone Bridge saved 8 children. What happened afterwards saved something less visible, but just as important. The possibility that thousands of people might pause before deciding who another person was. Not everyone changed. Some watched Daniel's speech, agreed with every word, and returned to their old habits the next day. Some shared his quotes online, but continued crossing the street when they saw someone who made them uncomfortable. Some praised his heroism while refusing to question why he had needed to be heroic before they saw his humanity. But others remembered. A receptionist listened before calling security. A police officer asked one more question. A manager reconsidered a rejected job application. A doctor examined a patient instead of accepting the easiest explanation. A frightened passenger opened a car door for someone standing in the rain. Small moments rarely appear on television. They do not receive awards or standing ovations. Yet lives are often shaped by those moments. Daniel grew older. His beard became completely gray, and the injury in his side hurt whenever storms approached. Every year on the anniversary of the accident, he walked to Millstone Bridge. Sometimes Marcus joined him. Sometimes Maya came with students from the training center. They placed 8 blue stars along the railing, one for each child who survived. During the 20th anniversary, a reporter asked Daniel how he wanted history to remember him. He looked toward the river. "People remember the moment I entered the water," he said. "I hope they also remember the moment I entered the hotel." Why? Because most of us will never have to climb into a sinking van. But every one of us will meet someone whose life we do not understand. The reporter waited. Daniel touched one of the blue stars attached to the railing. "We will have a few seconds to choose. We can treat that person according to the story in our head, or we can give them the dignity of being seen." He turned back toward the training center, where another generation of students was learning how to save lives. "That choice may not look heroic," he said, "but sometimes it is where every rescue begins."